Alright, in the previous lecture we have learned what's hashing and why we need it. Now in this lecture let's talk about hashing terminology. Now the first terminology is hash function. So let's identify what is hash function. By definition, it's a function that can be used to map data of arbitrary size to the data of fixed size. So as you remember in the previous lecture, we have used a magic function to convert strings to some numbers to store them in the array based on the cell index. So the magic function that we used in our previous lecture to insert these strings to this array over here is called hash function. So if we apply this hash function on a given string, it will convert it to a number, and we will use this number to insert these strings over here to this array over here. So you can easily see over here that we have used these three strings over here, Apple, application, and app millers, as the input to this magic function over here, and this magic function converted these strings to the number, and based on this number we have inserted these strings to this array over here. So hash function is the magic function that we have used to convert strings to the numbers. So let's continue to the next terminology, which is key. By definition, the key is the input data given by the user. Now one more time, if you go back to our diagram over here from the previous slide, we can easily see that these strings that we have used over here as an input are keys in this case. So in terms of hashing, the terminology for these inputs are called keys. So we have provided these strings as an input to the magic function, and it gives us as output the indexes. So the input in terms of hashing called key. Now let's continue to the next terminology. The next terminology is hash value. So hash value is a value that is returned by a hash function. So in our diagram over here, these numbers that we get from the magic function, which is hash function, are called values. So in terms of hashing, input is called key and the output is called hash value. So based on this hash value, we are inserting these strings to this array over here. Now hash values are also called hash codes, digest, and simply hashed. Now let's continue to the next terminology. The next terminology is hash table. So it's a data structure which implements an associative array abstract data type, a structure that can map keys to values. So in our case, this array that we have over here is called hash table. So in many other data structures, hash tables are used as dictionaries or hash map data structures. Now in our case, this array over here is hash table. Now let's continue to the last terminology. The last terminology is a collision. A collision occurs when two different keys to a hash function produce the same output, which is called hash value. So in our case, if Apple and application produce the same hash value over here, then in this case it will cause collision. So let's look at collision in a real life example. So let's say we have a hash table like this and we have hash function like this. Now in this case we want to insert some string value to this hash table over here. So let's say first string is ABCD. So as we said before, if we want to insert a string to this hash table over here, we have to get the hash value. So we are going to pass this ABCD to this hash function over here, and we will get the value. So in this case, you see that we are getting 20. So this means that we are going to insert ABCD at the index of 20 over here. So after insertion, everything works fine, so we don't have any problem. Now let's continue to the next string. So let's say we have next string like this, ABCDEF. So if I pass this ABCD over here to this function, we see that one more time we are getting 20 over here. So if I try to insert this ABCDEF to this array over here, we see that at the index of 20, we have ABCD. So which means that 20 is occupied. So in this case, if I try to insert this ABCDEF to this index of 20 over here, it will cause collision. So that's where collision occurs, if we have the same hash value for two different keys over here. So in this case, we are facing with collision. Now, in terms of hashing, the best hash function is the one which has less collision. So in this case, we can say that hash function performs very well. Now with this, we have come to the end of this lecture. So in this lecture, we have discussed main terminologies of hashing. So see you in the next lecture.